If I'm introducing the world to who I am, this is a part of who I am. And if you think you know me and you think you could put me in a box, you can't. Mm-hmm. There are layers, and they're complex, and they're not all easy to digest. But if you really see me, you need to see all of me.
Welcome to Reclaiming Gab.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm just totally being reminded. Your smile, I think, could solve all the world's problems.
Aww.
You have one of those smiles that is just, I don't know, it's lifting me up right now.
Oh,
so
good. Thank you. Thank
you.
I will tell my orthodontist that it all paid off.
Did you have braces and that whole thing? Oh, yeah.
Oh, I couldn't even close my mouth. I had buck teeth.
Oh, my gosh.
I sucked my thumb until I was 12.
Okay. I had what I called a soska, which is a pacifier, till I was 8. So, but I somehow, yeah.
I still have a softie, though. I'm going to give it up. My teeth are straight, but I got my softie.
You know what? We need it sometimes.
Sometimes you need a softie.
Yeah. I was thinking about, so we met in 2019 at the Vanity Fair Oscar dinner, and we had this great connect with Regina Hall. I couldn't remember exactly what we talked about, but I was like, oh yeah, well, we exchanged numbers. So I know that meant it was a good, I remember that feeling. Yeah. And I'm always happy when I see you and Dwayne there, because I feel like, oh, okay, touchstone people you have someone to go to in those rooms. Yes, exactly. Which is hard because I, as my brother jokes, I get a +0. So it goes.
Well, listen. We used to not get +1s, and you had to hope that your friend also got invited.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then when I started getting +1s, I just brought my friends who maybe didn't always get +1s or invited at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just, but I always feel whenever I see you guys, I'm like, oh, okay, good people.
There's some normal people.
Exactly. You do so much. Aside from all your acting, but you do so much advocacy and activism work. And you and Dwayne have led so many important societal conversations that I think really have helped people see how to think about different things and talk about different things. And you've got a new project that you are, what's the right way to say it? It's I guess it's a new message that you're helping to amplify.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, there's that great, I'm going to read it because I'll mess it up. And who wants to mess up Maya Angelou, right? But she said or wrote that as soon as healing takes place, go out and heal somebody else. And so you're now doing this in your partnership with Nema Health.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so we're trying something new on the podcast today, where later on, Dr. Sofia Noori from Nema Health is going to join the two of us. Yes. And since we're 3 girls with PTSD, we're going to chat it up.
Yes. Yes.
But I selfishly, I wanted to have a little bit of time with just you first. And I think there's so many things that we could chat on in terms of, I was thinking about your acting, that the 25th anniversary of Bring It On was just now. And the millennial producers on the show were telling me how culturally important it is. As a Gen Xer, I know, and interestingly, kind of, I don't know if it started, but cultural appropriation, that we really weren't talking about or calling out, right?
Not at all.
Was a big part. So, I mean, how do you view that and your role, and how do you that now, kind of 25 years on?
I mean, I think it's such an important movie at the time. And now you have 3 generations who have touched it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you're seeing grandparents, and their kids all watching it together and taking something away. And what I hear from, the grandparents who, were in the theaters back in the day, is that they felt like finally someone was shedding a light on the rape and pillage of culture and community and body parts, thoughts, inventions, and finally giving credit where credit was due. And that, when you steal someone else's intellectual property, you don't deserve to win. And there was always, like, at the time, there was all this conversation about who should have really won, in this cheerleading competition. Should it have been the Clovers or the Toros? But in a morality tale, you should never win when you've done, when you've exhibited piss poor behavior, no matter how much you think you've learned, because the damage that has been done will never outweigh your acknowledgement or your apology. You know what I mean? So having the team of Black and brown girls win using their own work felt so freeing and liberating and joyous for so many people, so many underdogs who've been in that position. And so it was exciting then, the reaction, and it's exciting now because we created something that stands the test of time.
Yeah.
Now, some jokes didn't age that well, but unfortunately, it's still relevant.
And then also, too, I was like, oh, we could also be talking about the fact I loved learning this about you, that you had been interested in law, but then you had an internship that sort of took you into is that right?
Yes, derailed my legal career before it even began. Yes.
Yeah. And so then, I was thinking about, okay, well, I think you chose a much better internship than I did. So
it was a little more lucrative, I guess, worked out.
Exactly. I got the short end of the stick there. But really, since I'm sort of a junkie when it comes to self-exploration, I hope you don't mind jumping into when you turned 50.
Yeah.
So, like, many people have parties or plastic surgery, and you did a really unique thing of you went to Africa, right? 4 countries in Africa.
Yes.
And you made a documentary, right? Yeah. And it's Gabrielle Union, My Journey to 50.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And so what were you hoping to explore and find there with that?
Every time I set foot in the continent, I reemerge. I am reborn. And I get little pieces of myself. I reclaim them. And I wanted my friends and my family to experience that same thing. And I wanted to hit a couple countries that I'd never been to or spots that I'd never been to. And so I gathered, some of the closest people to me that were able to fly to Africa. And we started in Tanzania. And we kicked off one of the big party celebrations there with the Maasai. And then we went to Ghana. And I wanted to take my family to Elmina Castle, which was the last place our enslaved ancestors were held before they were put on ships.
Oh, wow.
During the Middle Passage. Onto their enslavement in various parts of the Americas.
Yeah.
For me, it is a very haunted, occupied space that is incredibly sacred. And if you're quiet enough, you can hear our ancestors speaking to us. And sometimes it feels like a warning. Sometimes it feels like protection. Sometimes it feels like encouragement. But they're speaking to us. And too many of us aren't listening. And I wanted my family and my friends to be able to have the opportunity to listen. Wow. And when you can hear them, you can really, truly be in touch with yourself. And then we went to Namibia. My friend, Lewis Hamilton, had gone like a couple months before with a group of friends. And he was like, yo, Gab, you have to go. It's life-changing. And it's where the desert meets the ocean. And it's these beautiful red sand dunes.
Oh, wow.
And it's just incredible. And we were able to randomly, not a part of the schedule, meet the Himba people.
Okay. Wait, say that again.
Himba.
Himba. Okay,
I'm pronouncing that.
No,
correctly.
no, I've never heard of that before. Or heard of that group of people
before.
Before
we went, and they welcomed us in, and it was because usually magical. It's like a tour guide or something. You know what I mean? And it was truly, they saw us driving in, didn't know us other than clearly they were probably Westerners, and invited us in and embraced us into their homes, into their community, and we just had a chance to learn. And a couple of the younger people were trying to learn English, so it was just I think it was, a chance to practice. But that was life affirming.
Yeah.
And gave us a whole new world perspective. And then we ended in Soweto in South Africa. And, I'd already been to Joburg before, and I'd been all over Durban, but I'd never been to Soweto, and I'd never been to Cape Town.
Okay.
And it was just the trip of a lifetime. And each spot brought our family closer, my friends, my friendships closer. And it was exactly what I wanted for my 50th, to reclaim myself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. It's so interesting what you're saying, too. Journey Smollett was on just a couple of weeks ago. Me, too. And we were talking about sort of transgenerational trauma, and that, and she was talking about where that connection to ancestry comes in for her in her work. And I just think what a beautiful thing that you did and the way you talk about it too, of just the listening.
Yeah.
I think it's so hard in today's world where there's so much noise.
How do you cut through it?
Yeah. And that's a real, I'm going to give all my friends shit that they haven't taken me on a trip where I get to listen,
I mean, normally we're doing keg stands, so it's not like I wish I was, I had thought about this before, but for my 50th, I just knew I wanted something different.
Yeah.
Because we do, like, my birthday's around Halloween, so it's like we always do a theme party, and it's always just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and we kind of took it around the world, and I was like, let's take it back to the motherland and back to ourselves, back to the source. And I think this could be a little bit more profound and meaningful and life-changing and life-affirming for all of us.
Yeah.
And my mom, my mom had never been to Africa. And my mom's sister, my Aunt Katie, and we were in Ghana at the River of No Return, where they would, after basically marching our ancestors the distance from New York to Florida, they would put them in this river to clean them up, and they'd, lather them in grease to create the appearance of good health, to get the highest dollar. And as we were walking down towards this river, my mom falls out. And my mom is late 70s. And I'm thinking, oh, this is it.
Oh,
my mom just died. And everyone's, and this is all, the cameras were rolling. So this is all being caught.
Oh my gosh.
And very clearly, I heard my grandmother's voice, who's been gone many, many years. And she's all right. She's all right. And she took a break. She came back. She came to. They brought her numbers, back to within reason. And she was like, "Take me to the river."
Oh, wow.
And it was like, at that point, I'm already crying. Wow. We're not even at the river yet, and we get into the river, and everyone's kind of in their own sort of spot.
Yeah.
Meditating, praying, thinking, whatever each individual was sort of doing in that moment. And I kind of had lost track of where my husband was. And it was this beautiful sunny day. It was hot, beautiful sunny day. And my husband's in the river, and I just hear him scream. And I look over, and his arms are outstretched like Christ. And the sky opens up, and it is downpour out of nowhere.
Oh my!
And it was the most cleansing. It was like something out of a movie. And
wow.
I mean, luckily we caught it. And he's just standing there, and he's being like cleansed, if you will. But everyone was very, very emotional, and it felt otherworldly. But again, it's like when you listen, the ancestors, and you call upon them, they show up.
Yeah. I'm just really intrigued in myself right now, because I'm feeling so much emotion from this, and this is not my history. And I don't know if it's just because, just a couple of weeks ago, really in it with Journey, but it just is. I I feel grateful for, and I don't even know you that, like we've just had that great connection and text and stuff, but I feel grateful for you and your family that you were able to do that. And I'm so sorry for that history.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
it's just, I'm Jewish, and so it's a very different history, but there's a transgenerational history that we carry of being othered and being devalued. And so that's not what I'm just sort of feeling here.
It's because there is such a shared history of oppression.
Yeah.
And degradation and violence. And what the ancestors have endured, I feel, the spirit that I feel, it truly is no more, no more, no more, no more. They want so much better and more for us.
Yeah.
They want us to know peace. There was this is a billion years ago. It was the Bad Boys 2 press tour, and we were in Munich. And, I'd never been to Germany. My dad had been going for, forever since the Vietnam War. My dad somehow got sent to Europe instead of Vietnam, but always loved it. We always, if there was a Hofbräu, we were at that Hofbräu. like Prost, we had the beer steins and the whole thing. And he would always go. He still had friends over there. And so when I was over there, I was like, I want to go to Oktoberfest. We were there in October. I want some lederhosen. I want to experience the whole thing. And I remember asking how far Dachau was. And they're like, oh, it's like 45 minutes. I'm like, I'd like to go if we can fit that into the schedule. And I'm like, how much time do you think we would need, And this young kid that was like our driver / security was like, I don't know, like 45 minutes. I thought, I guess maybe it's smaller than I had thought. We get out there, it's massive. And I'm like, 45 minutes? Like,
yeah.
But when you speed through your history, you are bound to repeat your history. When you
will you say that again? Sorry.
When you speed through your history, you're bound to repeat that history.
It's really.
And when you don't fully understand the enormity of the destruction of a whole people, you are bound to repeat that.
Yeah.
And we spent, I don't know, it was like 6-7 hours.
Wow.
And, as you're walking through the space where the gas chambers were, if you listen, if you quiet yourself, you can hear the horror. Yeah. You can feel it. It's visceral. But then there's the people who are like, 45 minutes.
Yeah. But thank you for witnessing. Thank you for going and witnessing. And
when it's never forget, it should be never forget. And that goes
for all histories,
for
right?
all history. For all history.
Yeah.
And, what we see now is the erasure and the forgetting and the repetition.
It's interesting because I think I know people in the medical and science community never doubted we'd have another pandemic, but as a layperson, even though my dad's a doctor, but I was like, oh, we'll never have another, like science and medicine. And the fact that we had another pandemic after 100 years totally changed my landscape around like, oh, this other shit can happen again. It's not, there is no gone for good kind of a thing. And so it is, I'm so inspired by what you did in your trips. And I'm like, I do not vacation like that. No, I need
normally
to
we don't either, but it's like I needed something more.
Yeah.
I needed a lot more. And like there was one year we were going on vacation and I was like, I want to retrace the migration of the Moors. And everyone's like, what? And I'm like, Portugal. Like, I'm like, we can, know. And that got voted down. But I still want to go, even if I have to go by myself.
Right.
Tracy Ellis Ross has inspired me to like just travel by myself and be fabulous by myself.
It's so great. I like to, as a woman, I feel it's annoying. You have to be a little more cautious. Yeah. So you can't quite do as much. But I like to travel on my own because then I don't have to do shit I don't want to do.
Yes.
So, but have you thought about, I mean, I know Tracy Ellis Ross is doing her show, but have you thought about doing a travel book or something?
We had I'd been working with Sunny from The View on a travel show where we go around the world talking about like beauty and different ideas and techniques and theories about beauty and wellness in different parts of the world. I'm very passionate about it.
I can feel it.
Whether it's a TV show or just you see it on my social media, or it's just up here and we sit next to each other at a Chili's during happy hour, and I'll share with you. I'll regal you with my travel tales.
Exactly.
I love it, and I love being educated. I love walking into situations very humble and quiet and just listening and observing and sitting at the feet of masters who can, fill you with so much history and knowledge. And I love that.
Yeah.
That's like my nerdy part.
I like it. It's like all the people I really like and respect have a nerdy part. Because that's passion, right? There's this, I'm going to read this long quote, if that's okay, that I read from when you came back from your trip. Or maybe you said it on your trip, but it was, everything up to 50 in my life has been centered around trauma. If my heart was here, trauma surrounded it. Something about this trip and learning about self has made me feel like the next 50 years, anything is possible. I can do anything. My birthday was in Zanzibar, and it was the most full I felt in the absence of trauma. In the past, when people have rallied around me, it's been because of trauma. Not having that trauma center stage, I was able to be loved fully, differently. Which, that really moved me. And I know there's the connection to what you're doing with Nema Health, too. And when Tarana Burke was on the show, she taught me when asking people about trauma to not always ask them to go back into it. And I know you're very open with some of the trauma that's led you to who you are today, but I don't know how you're feeling today. So do you feel okay talking about it? Do you want me to summarize? Okay.
No. It's for so long, I thought I was no longer disassociated. And a couple years ago, I did my girlfriend Octavia Spencer's show, Truth Be Told, and that season was about sex trafficking in the Bay Area. And I'm going to not give spoilers in case someone wants to watch this.
I haven't watched it yet. So.
But there was a very pivotal scene towards the end that takes place, a violent scene that takes place on the steps of the Alameda County Superior Court, which is where I gave my grand jury testimony against my rapist.
Right.
And the 5 months that I was filming that show, I was coming home crying. I'm not a crier. I'm pretty stoic. Turns out I was disassociated. Yeah. But I was crying. And with each episode, it was like some little piece got revealed that my mind had covered.
Yeah.
So I could survive.
Yep.
And they're like, okay, girl, you are 50. I think it's time to give you a fuller picture. And I was, it's like it just happened. Every day just felt like it was minutes, seconds ago.
Right. And you were 19 when the
I was 19 when it originally happened. So I was at a summer job in between my freshman and sophomore years of college. And I got a job at Payless Shoe Source with my girlfriends. And because you don't actually have to help anybody. And we were lazy.
I worked in a toy store.
Yes, And my girlfriend's, there was a Garth Brooks concert, and we were all very much into Garth. But as the Black girl, they were like, "You don't really want to go, do you?" And I was like,
really?"
That's how I interpreted it.
Okay. Wow. I'm sorry.
I love friends in low places. I am the friend in a low place. And so, but I was like, I'll cover for you guys. I'll work for you guys so you guys can go. And while we were, getting ready to close early because we were terrible employees, we had already done
all young people
young people are. We'd already done the bank drop and everything. There was very little money. And as we're closing, I was vacuuming early, and I see this man come in, and everything in my body said, run out the back. Run out the back. But he was a Black man. And I was like, I'm not going to do this to this Black man in front of this young white woman that I was working with. I'm like, I'm not going to fall to, for this terrible stereotype. This is stupid. Yeah. These are my own people. So I ignored that thing in my body that said run. And a short time later, I heard the woman I was working with yell for me to come to the front. And it was something about her voice. And again, my body was like, run. But I didn't want to be rude. And you know how we're conditioned. Don't be.
Oh, yeah. Be a good girl.
Rude. Be a good girl. Be a nice girl. Mm-hmm. And I walked to the front, and he's holding the gun on her. And in my head, it was just like, fuck, you could have just ran.
Yeah.
But of course, he's angry because there was no money. Mm-hmm. And so he tells us to go into the back. Mm-hmm. And mind you, about 2 weeks before, Oprah had done a special on what to do in case you were a victim of a violent crime.
Oh, wow.
And I had watched. I was religious about Oprah. Okay. And she had a member of law enforcement talking about what to do. And one of the things that he said was, don't let them take you to a second location. So as he's telling us to go into the stock room, I'm like, is this a second location? Right. I remember wondering. And I'm like, because the whole thing was, if they take you to a second location, they're going to kill you. So there were all these boxes that were stacked up that we were supposed to put away, didn't put away. Mm-hmm. And the woman that I was working with had been robbed before at that store. And she's pissed. Wow. And she's knocking the boxes off, and she's cussing.
Yeah.
But the gun is on me. I'm closest to him. She's leading. And I'm like, oh no, I'm really going to die. I'm really going to die. Oh my God. So he takes us to the back room, and he tells us to get undressed. And I was like, oh, I guess we're just going to be naked and dead. And then he tells us to go into the bathroom. And I thought, okay, maybe he's going to let us live.
Right.
He just wants time to get away, maybe. And we get into the bathroom. We didn't lock the door. We just,
Well, yeah, no.
You're not even thinking. And a couple seconds later, he opens the door and he was like, no, you come out. And at that point, I was like, oh, shit, I'm about to get raped.
Oh, God.
Oh, shit.
Oh, Gabrielle.
And at some point, he very calmly asked me to hand him his gun. Because it's like I'm watching the whole thing like above myself.
Yep.
And I'm watching myself be raped on the ground. And then when he was like, hey, can you hand me my gun? It was like the self up here and the self getting raped slammed into each other. Mm-hmm. And I grabbed the gun, and as best as I could, like I knew that I had to pop the clip in. And I ended up shooting into the ground. I grabbed the gun and tried to spin around and shoot him as I was kind of falling away, and missed. I literally shot into the ground next to me. And then in my brain, it's like, click it 7 times, it's a revolver. It was not a revolver. And my finger got caught in between the trigger, and I'm trying to turn it away from my face. And he's just pounding, he's just punching my face. And eventually he is able to get the gun away. And he's like, nah, I'm going to have to kill you, bitch. And I'd had my boyfriend at the time's chain on. And I was like, here, take the chain. It's worth more than what you got. Mm-hmm. And then very calmly asked me how to get out. And I pointed towards the back exit, and he left. But that whole time I was fighting for the gun. I'm screaming for the girl to come out, screaming for her. Obviously, we don't know what we're going to do in a traumatic situation. She did not come out. But when he left, I don't even know what the right word is. Hysterical would be a tiny piece of it. In shock.
Wrecked.
Like nothing bad has ever happened to me. I'm like bigger, badder, better. Like you have to be, a AAA student to be, so they don't think you're trash or stupid. Like you had to be perfect. And I did a great job up until this point. And eventually she comes out, calls the police. And my sister and my dad had been at the hardware store that was across the way. Uh-huh. And I guess they heard the or saw the sirens and whatever, knew that I was at work, and they came over because it was like they were there right when the police were there. And my older sister was in college studying criminal justice, and she knew the police codes. And my dad was like embarrassed that I was hysterical. And he's like, calm down, calm down, calm down. And I watched my sister whisper to my dad, and his face just like I died. And I mean, I had. Mm-hmm. And that just wrecked me again. And that was day one. And the rest of the next 33 years has been surviving and figuring out how to find peace consistently. And just knowing what that feels like in my body.
Yeah.
Like real peace. I've had moments. And now I'm looking to string more moments together into a life for the next, my great-grandma lived to be 110. She was on Donahue.
Wait, I'm like still in your story,
Yeah.
and now I'm hearing you say 110, but I just want to.
I just know that there's so much more life.
Yeah.
And I know that my body cannot sustain this kind of trauma and terror for another 60 years. Like I don't want to, but also it causes health problems.
There's a toll.
There is a steep toll.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that happened to you. As women, we're sort of always that, like when you're a kid, it's don't take candy from the street. You're afraid of being kidnapped. And as a woman, once you start to develop, you're afraid of being, it's hard to say the word, raped. And I've had unwanted sexual experiences, but they were not as traumatic as that. And I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry you went through that.
No,
it's
and
just it's and I know I know from my own, different chapters of trauma that the ability to talk about it is important because it helps other people. And there's, it's like you find your way of being able to talk about it. And for me, it's like disconnect from it in certain ways. But then there are the moments where I'm sure you've had other people like reaffirm that disassociating and dropping back in. I had that. I was almost carjacked, and someone had a gun, and then there were 4 people, and it was that whole thing of like all of a sudden, I could see, and that was how I knew there were 4 people, because when I started to do some of the healing work, I had the memory file of like seeing down, and it was, the car doors are being pulled, and it's 4 different people, and when they started pulling the car doors, I dropped in and was like, I can drive away, like, be present, and so it's just but that is not the same as the body violation,
but they're all violations, and everyone's threshold for trauma is different. And I remember I went to UCLA, and when I got there, I went after this. I transferred, and I went to the mental health services, and I was in group therapy and individual therapy. And I remember in group, once I told my story, there's so many other people, mainly women, but there were some guys in there as well, felt like their stories of rape weren't, and I'm using my finger quotes, legitimate.
Yeah.
Because mine was a stranger with a gun.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, no.
Yeah.
All of our rapes are legitimate. Whether it's a stranger or someone you know, or there's a weapon or there's not a weapon, if something happens to you that you do not want to happen to you, that's it.
Yeah.
Or if there's a power inequity, like but it's like there's so many sources where people are trying to rob folks of their experience and trying to place labels on an experience that they've never felt or have first person accounting of, that makes you think you're crazy.
Yeah.
And there's so much blame.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, when I first got microphones put in my face and I first became a little bit more known, I realized that I could use this time with a microphone in my face to talk about dumb shit, or I could talk about this life-changing event and how I'm surviving. So other people don't feel like you're alone, because you very much feel like you're on an island with your trauma.
Yeah.
And no one could possibly understand. And when the more you talk about it, the more, literally, the phrase was "Me Too."
Yeah.
Before it became a hashtag, that's
Yeah.
literally what people would say. Hey, girl, that happened to me too. You know? And there were so many Me Too's that it just gave me wings to, lobby state legislatures for more funding for rape crisis centers, to, clear the backlog of rape kits, to be on President Obama's advisory committee for violence against women and children. Like, it gave me what I needed to, while disassociated, talk about my trauma and try to find help for myself and other people.
Yeah.
And I realize now that if I hadn't been disassociated, I probably wouldn't be here. It was too much.
Same girl.
It was too much. Yeah, it was too much.
It's really interesting. You said something before that was exactly my experience of, I feel like I said this in this chair before, but it is relevant I had been with my current therapist for several years, and something come up, and I was like, I was a virgin when I was 19. I was like, well, technically I was 14, but that didn't count, And she was like, what do you mean that didn't, And I was like, well, I was at camp, and it was a camp counselor, and I was 14, and he was 18, but then turned out he was actually 21. And I mean, the whole thing. But I was like, well, I wanted to be there. And she was like, did you want to have sex with him? Did you talk about having sex? And I said, no. And he stopped after I told him to stop, but it had happened, and she was like, well, that's an unwanted sexual experience. And I was like, no, that's not that thing. And we didn't have language for that. And I think we are always, that somehow we're not given permission to just own our trauma and that is part of what's hard, is until we're able to do that, we can't really heal all of it. But what was interesting to me, and what you were saying before about it coming at different points, like why I was just saying that story, is because I was in my 40s and when that happened, and it had been a few years, like, after things had started to change for me and people were seeing me differently, and I was beginning to reclaim my narrative. And I look at that now and I realize there was no space for the other trauma until my big trauma started to heal.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is complicated, is like, everybody is walking around with trauma.
Everybody.
And
we're not all perfect victims.
No. It's, I think of it, I'm so curious, and we'll bring Dr. Noori in soon, but I think of it all, I consider it modern trauma. I think that's this era that we're in, of like, this is now going to be something we talk about. This is now going to be something that people are able to address, because people like you are talking about it, doing your advocacy work. I mean, it's, but I think it is, and trying to strip away all the shame around it. I mean, you've been really brave in the way you've talked about it too, because you first shared this story, right, in an op-ed.
Well, the first time I publicly talked about it, I was, like 27 or so.
Okay.
And I'd gotten the cover of this new magazine called Savoy Magazine. And in this cover story, is my first time ever being on the cover of anything. And it was like my cover story, and it's like introducing, Gabrielle Union. And that's, towards the beginning of my career, certainly the beginning of my film career. And it just felt important to tell the story, because I was working on a show called City of Angels. And one of the storylines was that there was a serial rapist targeting the women in the hospital. And I went to our showrunner and our writers, and I was like, I begged. I'm like, please, I can't. My character can't be raped. Because like each week I'm looking at the script like, is my character not? And I'm like, I can't. I'm not there. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. And in me advocating for myself in terms of the story, I felt like it was, I could advocate for myself in print. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if I'm introducing the world to who I am, this is a part of who I am. And if you think you know me and you think you could put me in a box, you can't. Mm-hmm. There are layers and they're complex and they're not all easy to digest. But if you really see me, you need to see all of me. Yeah. And that's what I want. Mm-hmm. And so I first talked about it then. But it's like every time I've talked about it, it's like people decide that I'm not a rape survivor. And then it's like, so every time I talk about it, it's like I've never said it before.
Oh my God. So like, give me those people's names.
Like, and they're like, what? No, you're so, and I'm like,
oh my gosh.
And so over the years, as the story comes up, or I went on Oprah and I talked about it then, or and I mentioned it in a speech I gave and it comes up again. But I've never not talked about it. It's just as it comes in and out of the public consciousness, it's always a surprise because they've decided what victims look like. Yeah. And I don't fit handily into a victim box. And I'm like, girl, I am in the massive box.
You're like,
you have no idea. And I try to talk about the journey to being a survivor. Mm-hmm. But there's many days I'm in a victim space and I can't advocate for myself, much less anyone else. Mm-hmm. And on those days, I look to other people to lead and other people to give me the inspiration that I hope I give to someone. And Tarana's been amazing. Alyssa Milano, like there's been so many very outspoken women and men. Mm-hmm. But really, like my main source are just regular people on the street, and it's every race, age, ethnicity, religion, political affiliation. Right. It is the grand equalizer. Yeah.
Equal opportunity. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's really, if this feels like too personal, then don't.
Go for it. Yeah,
I'm just curious because I think, I feel I'm in a different place now, but for a very long time, I think that I felt like my trauma was too big for someone else to ask someone else to try to hold it in relationship. And so I just wonder, like, what that's been like for you. How does Dwayne hold that for you? Does he hold that for you? I make that assumption just from the energy I felt between you two. But if that doesn't, I don't know if that's too personal.
No. I mean, I had a boyfriend when this happened. Mm-hmm. And it happened to him. Like rape happens to communities. It happens to families. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? One rape impacts a community. Mm-hmm. And we were kids. And his instinct was to coddle. My instinct was to rage. Mm-hmm. My instinct was violent. My instinct was fighting. Yeah. My instinct, like physically, I wanted to like hit people. Not him necessarily, but like there was so much rage. Yeah. And so that's a lot, and I'm still trying to go to college. I'm still trying to play sports. I'm still trying to become an actress.
You're only a few years post puberty, even.
Like I'm like a kid. Yeah. Like I'm used to my dad telling me what to do, and so trying to go from that to living with a man who's doesn't know what to do, and his instinct is to like baby or coddle, and my instinct is to break free. It's hard to have a relationship when someone else's idea of recovery and care doesn't match where you're at. And that's been a kind of a reoccurring theme. And with, by the time I met Dwayne, so many people that he had, been with and, very close relationships in his family had experienced sexual violence. Wow. So this wasn't new to him. And he would just ask, like, what do you need today? because it changes. So by the time I was doing Truth Be Told, I would just come home and be crying, and he would just be holding me. And I'm sure there's a lot of feelings of helplessness, because you want to make it right. You want to, fight somebody. You want to fix it. And there's not a quick fix. It's just being present. And he's been great. And my friends I have the best friends in the world.
No, I have the best friends
oh my gosh.
Fight you.
when I finally wrapped on Truth Be Told, they literally had a car waiting for me from Paramount to go out to Malibu. And they had they had a drum circle and spiritual folks and prayer warriors. And they did a rebirth.
Cleansed you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just...
Wow.
I tried to release it. It was it's like it just happened.
Yeah.
But, over time and a lot of therapy, every kind of therapeutic.
Yeah. I hear you.
I've tried it, from hypnotherapy to talk therapy to guided MDMA, whatever.
Okay.
I've tried it all. It was very poignant, very helpful. And then, my trauma didn't really go anywhere. I needed something that would stick, Again, I firmly believe I got 60 more years. I need something that will stick for this, the PTSD that lives and breathes like alien in my body.
I hear you. Yeah. Well, I think this is a good place for us to pause and invite Dr. Noori in.
Yeah.
Dr. Sofia Noori, welcome to Reclaiming. Thanks for joining our conversation now.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Monica.
Of course. You know what? We're really excited about being able to talk about this. There's probably something wrong with me that I like to talk about trauma.
I do too. So much. It's my favorite topic to talk about trauma recovery.
I think as we were, chatting on before, I feel like it's been almost a silent sin in our society. But so, Dr. Noori, you're an advocate for women's health, and you are the co-founder of the Women's Mental Health Conference, the first academic and trainee-led conference focused on women's well-being in the nation. And Gab, you recently joined Nema Health as an advisor and an investor. Yes. So what drew you to wanting to both take your advocacy and activism this way and drew you to Nema Health specifically?
I wanted a solution. I wanted a solution. My life had shrunk considerably. I wasn't an active participant in my life. And the things I was participating in, I had fleeting memories of. You go through a whole night and you're like, who was there? I was talking. Huh. And just the idea of an invitation comes in and I'm like, I love when people cancel plans. It was just, my world was just shrinking when it should be expanding. I have a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And everything I tried, nothing was sticking.
Yeah.
And I needed something to stick. I got 60 more years. And I'd heard about Nema Health. And I was like, well, where are you at in this process? I'd like to back this up with my wallet. And I want to be a client. I want to be someone who goes through the program. And it's really changing kind of everything. It's giving me different tools. I've been in therapy for 33 years, but it's giving me different tools and a different perspective that's giving me a lot more peace. You mentioned insomnia. I can't sleep because I'm thinking about everything that could possibly go wrong. I'm thinking about conversations that have never happened and will never happen. Well, if someone says this, and I got to be prepared with this, and then I'll start Googling facts.
Yeah.
Why? So I'm prepared.
Yeah.
I'm never caught unprepared. I you can't live that way. It's exhausting.
It is,
and it
so
robs
exhausting.
me of the joys of motherhood. It robs me of the joys of being in this loving relationship. It robs me of my amazing friends. And I wanted to reclaim it. And it's been a massive, massive tool on this journey.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think we've both talked about trauma similarly of not being linear, you know, and I think, and I'm so curious, you know, I mean, I experienced that and all really the practitioners I talk to, but my therapist is a trauma psychiatrist, and she'll talk about trauma as being an echo, like that the echo just kind of gets softer and softer, but that process is, visually for me, it always comes up as like a tilted spiral of that thing of that you sort of, once you realize that it feels like you're going down, but you're actually going down to go up. Like you go backwards to go forwards in that way. But it may feel like you're going backwards, but you are actually going forwards. I don't know if that resonates, you know,
depending on the day.
Yeah.
Depending on the day. Because there's days where it's like, it didn't happen, never happened. This is not a part of my life. And then there's days, this is the only thing that's ever happened.
I wanted to ask you something super basic, which is just like, how do you define PTSD?
Great question. And, you know, it's so funny because it's like I've know the clinical definition, right? And I'm like constantly diagnosing people and like seeing patients. But this question kind of like takes me back for a second because I want to think about it in like the most elemental way. PTSD is about what the trauma left you with, right? And the impact that trauma has had on you, right? Because not everyone who suffers from a traumatic event, which frankly, like most Americans have actually developed PTSD, right? And it's about the meaning making, right? And how you relate to the trauma afterwards. And what happens with a lot of people is that they believe that the trauma is their entire book. They can't imagine another chapter in their book, right? And they start to think that the trauma defines who they are, right? And that's when people start to develop like the symptoms of PTSD. And they may not even know that that's what's happening, right? But generally, you know, when we talk about PTSD, we talk about the fact that after a trauma, almost everyone has post-traumatic stress symptoms. You're worried that, you know, you're going to get into another car accident again, that you're a terrible driver, right? That, you know, someone else is going to hit you or whatever it is, right? And what happens is people can't stop thinking that way. And so their lives become smaller and smaller. They stop driving, right? They only walk to work because they don't need to drive. And then what happens is they start to avoid, right? They can't stop thinking about what happened to them, right? And so that's how people develop PTSD. And for me, at the most elemental level, it's believing that you're not left with anything now that the trauma has happened.
It's interesting because what you were just saying made me think about how, you know, that thing like when you have a physical injury and if you don't get it healed, you start to accommodate, right? And other muscles take over and then before you know it, you've sort of, I mean, not that muscle's atrophied, but you have a different problem because
exactly because of the consequence of the original problem that you weren't actually able to fully heal to begin with, right? There's 4 categories of symptoms that people develop after the trauma, right? And the first category is what we call like re-experiencing symptoms. So everyone classically thinks about like flashbacks and like nightmares, right? But actually the most common type of re-experiencing symptom is having what we call like an emotional or physical flashback, right? Somebody treats you the way that, you know, and causes you to feel something that brings you back to the way you felt when the event happened, right? So when that happens, it's super distressing for people, right? So they have to check out. So the next category of symptoms is avoidance, right? Where you just tell people like, you know, you're not going to talk about it, right? Like when it comes into my head, I'm going to stop thinking about it. Like this is where people think that they almost like, they don't have the memory anymore because they've locked it in a closet, right? And then other people use substances like drink or smoke weed or whatever to kind of numb themselves, right? So that's the next category of symptoms. And obviously people avoid people, places, things too. So that's like, I can't go into a crowd anymore. Like I can't go to a concert, right? And so your life becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And then people start to develop what we call negative cognitions and mood. So when you think about complex trauma, or CPTSD has been like a really common term.
Right.
This category of symptoms is for that. So people just thinking that they're always to blame, right? So having these negative thoughts about yourself because this happened to you. Like if I had just done this, maybe it wouldn't have happened. It happened because I'm bad. Right. And of course, you're not going to feel good about yourself. You're not going to be joyous and happy. Right. So people start to lose hope. And what I often hear too is that people just like don't feel creative anymore. Like they can't imagine.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last category of symptoms is what we call like hypervigilance or hyperarousal. And this is the nervous system. Yeah. Like you're always on 10, right? You're watching your back. Like you're on edge, guarded, right? And also the most common symptom, and people don't realize this, is insomnia. So that's actually the most common symptom of PTSD. Yeah, is just not being able to sleep. Yeah. And people often stop dreaming, I've noticed.
Oh.
And I think it goes back to this, like you literally lose your ability to imagine.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Sophia, you too had sexual violence in college, right?
Yeah.
And that led you on your path, right?
Yeah,
into wanting to understand PTSD more. I mean, talk to me about that.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have to go into all the
No worries. Well,
you know.
I thank you. I appreciate also how much we're like holding space as well for us to like share what we feel comfortable to share. So I just wanted to say thank you, Monica, for doing that.
Trauma sensitive podcast host here, girl.
We're a bunch of gals with PTSD, right? So we get it. I mean, and just going back to like this whole thing about like transgenerational trauma and like intergenerational trauma. I mean, it's like for me, I always thought about my story like starting with the sexual violence or, suffering sexual assault in college. And recently I've been thinking a lot more that like it actually, trauma started so much earlier, like in my history, and is why I wanted to like do this work, right? So my family survived the Vietnam War and were refugees here, right? So I like grew up hearing about like, how they were boat people and their boat sank off the coast of Hong Kong and then they swam to shore, right?
Wow.
And so like just grew up with that backdrop, which made me really interested in like psychology and mental health. And then, my childhood was really fraught, and then, then was assaulted. And to be honest, I kept it together for 6 months. I got a 4.0 that semester, right? I took the MCAT the summer after and aced it basically, right? Because I'm here now.
Disassociation.
Exactly. And then I like fell apart like 6 months later, right? And was always like really inquisitive, always wanted to like understand this better. And then, started reading about trauma and like learned that the traumas that are most likely to cause PTSD are actually sexual assault and domestic violence. Why doesn't anybody talk about that, right? And so I got super fired up, became a rape crisis counselor after college. And I think I basically exposure therapied myself in some ways, but because I was literally like, answering the hotline for calls from, survivors in crisis. And then also I had a pager, and they would page me when there was a survivor who needed to get a rape kit done, like at the hospital. Yeah. And we would literally go there, hold their hand, right? Like shepherd them through. And I would be literally crying like on my way because I was so triggered myself, frankly. But I was like, I need to do this. Like I need to help somebody else, right?
Wow.
And so that then I was like, it actually helped me so much to do it, frankly. Like I don't necessarily recommend that people do that, but it was actually a very corrective experience for me.
Interesting.
And then went on to med school, thought I wanted to be an OB-GYN, realized I could not cut up vaginas. Like that was really, I could not get past that. But so then I started focusing on women's mental health. Went to psychiatry residency, and then again, like in psychiatry residency too, it's like you learn the treatment guidelines for every condition, right? And like what therapies are going to best help, what medications are going to best help. And it was just wild to me that there are actually trauma therapies, like protocols of therapies that are designed to help people fully recover from PTSD, and nobody gets them. And then I was like, if there's one thing that I'm going to do, it's going to be to start a clinic that helps get these types of therapies to people.
So tell me then specifically like what the clinic is, like what Nema Health is, what?
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, for sure. So it's a clinic that only sees survivors of trauma, and we, again, because survivorship and just traumas are so wide and varied, the people that we see have like any and all kinds of traumas.
Yeah.
So we see first responders, we see sexual assault survivors, domestic violence survivors, like the whole gamut, right? And we do all of the first line therapies that help people recover from PTSD. So it's essentially like a trauma recovery clinic, right? So we spent about 2 years designing the care model, and then I was the first therapist. So I saw all the first patients, like the first several dozen patients, to make sure it actually worked, right? And so we do the first line therapies, but we do it a little bit differently. And so, there's two cutting edges to PTSD treatment. One is, psychedelics, right? But not fully legal, but like still kind of experimental, right? Can be promising. And then there's something called massed treatment. And what we're actually learning is that the dose of therapy matters. So not just the kind of therapy, right? But the amount of therapy that you get when you have PTSD can actually improve the outcome and the response. And so generally we see folks 3 times a week, 2 to 5 times per week. And we also add in a lot of support because, again, it's a kind of condition where your life gets smaller. And so we a couple of the other things that we do is like peer mentorship, because people's lives are so like really constricting. Like they just need like a support or a shoulder, even as they're going through the therapy, right? And we also try to enlist their families and loved ones, if they have them, to also support them. So we'll do what we call support system sessions, where we explain actually what PTSD is to the family or to the loved ones and how they can best support their loved one. And then we also explain how they can best support themselves, because I think about a quarter of all of our inquiries come from loved ones.
Interesting.
Who see that their loved one is struggling, right? And wants them to get help.
Yeah. Oh, how interesting. I mean, Gabrielle, you threw yourself into, like you were saying before, you got to UCLA and you went straight into therapy. And do you, looking back, do you think that sort of helped save you in ways?
I'm alive because of that. I got workman's comp kicked in really, really fast within days of my rape. And so maybe 4 days later, I had my first therapy session. And when those sessions, like that group of sessions, I started going to therapy based on my parents' insurance. And then when I was ready to go back to college, and I went to UCLA, they had a huge mental health department or center. And I just continued. I knew that I couldn't take a break. I wasn't in that space of being away from home, living with a boyfriend. I needed help. Yeah, and it was massive. And since I've worked with UCLA Rape Crisis Center, and it's just such a great resource for the community, not just UCLA students. It's mainly not UCLA students. It's the surrounding community. And I've seen the work that they do, and it's just necessary. I wish I didn't sound so dun, but I would not be here if that didn't exist. I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah. No, it is. I love so much what you're doing with Nema, because I hadn't heard of it, and my sort of life goal of like, okay, when I leave this plane, if I have somehow contributed to my vision was around emotional trauma urgent care centers, being, being as accessible as regular urgent care. And it sounds very much like this is kind of what you guys are doing. And I'm just curious around both your experience and what you see in this sort of compounded traumas, because you had a difficult experience with infertility, and I've found for myself, I think, when I first did EMDR, basically there were a lot of things that were coming up that I wasn't ready to see. And so I stopped. I was like, what the fuck? Why am I having this fucked up dream about, whatever? I'm not going to get into details here, but, and so I now, with my understanding of trauma, I now understand it's like, all these things, I put all these things in the folder together. They're all interconnected for me in my body, in my psyche. They may not make sense to someone else that they're all connected, but that trauma. So how do you look at that kind of compounded?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lack of control. I wanted my body to do something, it wouldn't do it. You know, things were happening to me that I didn't want to happen, that I had no control over. And I thought I could control my fertility, you know, whether that
sure,
be,
we're pretty much taught that.
well, yeah, you know, like whether if we're using condoms, if I'm on the pill, I have control over what is going to happen to my body.
I've never thought about it that way.
You know, and then when it's like, now I'm ready, and then it's like, my body's like, no, girl, it's not going to work like that. And it's the loss of control. And it set me spiraling, you know, doing all of the things that I needed to do to put myself in a position to even have a child. I didn't want to do all of those things. Inside, I had to do them to get my child. But it was not a part of the dream, the plan.
Right.
None of it was typical. And I fought it every step of the way, you know, all the way through surrogacy. It was very hard and very painful. And it was because it's happening outside of my control. Even my child's incubation is outside of my control, outside of my body. You know what I mean? So it was definitely a mind fuck, the whole thing.
Do you feel like your experience would have been the same with that if you didn't have PTSD from the sexual assault, or do you think it exacerbated it?
I think it exacerbates everything.
Yeah. I know. Surprise!
It's chronic stress, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I can find the challenge in every situation, right? So it just makes you hyper aware of every single thing, every twitch, you know, I'm hyper aware of body language and tone and so it impacts everything. And since it's been my whole adult life, I hope it would be different. I'd like to think it would be, but I don't really know because this is all I know. I've had this more than I've not had it.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm curious. I mean, do you feel like, I guess my hope or fantasy or what I feel like I feel like I've experienced it myself too, is that the healing is about there being more space between the triggers and the recovery being faster. But is there the philosophy at Nema around sort of just long-term, like how you look at trauma?
Great question, Monica. And it's something that I've spent honestly, I mean, I've spent time, first of all, I'm a survivor, right? So it's I'm thinking about this for myself too. And also I am a physician and a researcher. So I want to look at the research and see what it says. And honestly, actually the research is way more optimistic than people are, which is really interesting.
Okay.
And,
that is.
Yeah. And so, and you know, it makes sense if you think about it, because if you think about PTSD, it's the only mental health condition where there is a cause, right? Where you can actually name the day in which you've started to have symptoms, right? And you know, the only sort of a group that's not true for is people who have child abuse, right? And even then, though, they often can tell that this isn't me, or there's something deeper to me, right? And so if you think about it, it makes sense that you can actually recover from PTSD because you were different at some other point, and most people don't develop PTSD after a trauma, right?
Oh, so, okay. Wait. Say that again. Sorry.
No worries.
No, because that's new to me.
Yeah, so most people do not develop PTSD after a trauma.
Okay.
So about 83% of people of Americans have actually suffered a trauma, but somewhere around 1 in 10, 1 in 12 people will go on to develop PTSD.
Okay.
So we know actually that most people do not develop the symptoms for forever, right? So when you look at the research, so the therapies that actually work the best for PTSD are these trauma-focused therapies that are structured therapies that essentially are purpose-built for epiphanies, right? And help you process through your trauma so that, again, you understand that you can write the rest of your book, right? Okay. The rest of the chapters of your book. And they generally take about 10 to 15 sessions to complete. EMDR is one of them.
Okay.
The other two are cognitive processing therapy and prolonged exposure. And what is really powerful about the therapies that I wish I could just shout this from the rooftop is that if you do the top two, which is cognitive processing therapy and prolonged exposure, if you do those therapies and you don't do any more therapy if they visit Monica again after 10 years, the chances are you will not develop symptoms again. You will actually you'll be in permanent recovery, right?
Okay.
Because you can't unthink yourself back into the PTSD after you see it in a different light, right?
Oh.
And so I think it's like so interesting because we think that after you're traumatized, you wear a scarlet letter and like we can make the scarlet letter smaller, but it's always on you, right?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily, like nobody can take away the fact that trauma happened to you, but the symptoms that you have do not need to be there, right? And so actually the prognosis is actually really good for folks if they're able to get a trauma therapy. And so, generally what happens, like back to, like the sort of practical answer to your question is that, and I've noticed this too, is like, because I think about myself as being in recovery, is that like, I honestly don't have days where I get triggered anymore. The only time where I get super triggered by something or like have a quote unquote bad day is if something is really unexpected and like really takes me back there, right? Then I have to like lay down and I can feel it. I can like feel it coming back up, right? And I just have to like lay down and care for myself. But I know now, like, because I can't think the same way. So it just doesn't come back up the same way too.
That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I find there's sort of like the list of triggers or the kinds of things that could just totally light switch trigger me. But then I also find if too many little things are happening, like the thing that would just wobble me a little normally, if there are too many of those in a condensed period of time, then I also just kind of lose it. Maybe that's not PTSD. Maybe that.
Yeah, some of this is being a human, and a lot of it is, it could be too, right? Like there's something called a cognitive load too, right? Where it's like you can only do so much advanced calculus, like in your brain, basically, right? And then you just drop things or you become overwhelmed, right? And so like going back to what you were saying too, Gabrielle, about like just having to calculate the risk of everything. Like a lot of people with PTSD often think that they have ADHD. Because
I think that, but I self-diagnose I self-diagnose from Instagram.
It's so funny.
Naturally,
the
best
right?
doctors are on Instagram.
Yeah, because you have bigger fish to fry. You're thinking about your safety, right? So how is a kid who's being abused at home, and worried about being harmed, going to be able to do math well, right? Like that's where we get into like complex trauma and all of those pieces too. Yeah.
Then don't add perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's also this age where we get to this age where we start becoming dismissed and invisible.
Yeah.
But you're going through so many things and you don't want to be just dismissed as a bitter bitch.
Right.
As a bitter old bitch or whatever.
Yeah.
That mean old lady. Like you, and because that's like the stereotype.
Oh, yeah.
And you're fighting against all of these things while trying to just exist in society. And it just feels like the odds are stacked against you. There's so many days where you're like, too much. It's too much. Because the ragey rage from PTSD plus...
the perimenopause. Oh, my God. That 0 to 60 is like, what? What just happened?
Whew.
Yeah. No.
So I really want women of our age range who are dealing with complex trauma to understand that there are exits. To get off this jacked up freeway.
One thing I wanted to bring up too that honestly I just learned myself is that low estrogen states actually increase PTSD symptoms. So essentially when you
lucky us.
So
there you go.
Yes. So menopause, right, when your estrogen levels are going down is a time when people actually have increased trauma symptoms, right? And then the other time is after pregnancy. Because their estrogen's going lower. Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to tell you all that because I felt that would be valuable.
Yeah, thank you.
Young lady. Sure.
Yes. Because it makes you feel like you're crazy. And and it leads to more isolation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I always say the worst things happen when people are suffering in silence.
That's so true.
What's something that anybody who's listening to our chat who might be a survivor, like what's something that you both want them to know or to take away from the conversation?
There's help. There's help that will really change your life in a more permanent way. In the way that you think that your trauma is permanent, so can your healing be permanent. And this does not have to be your whole life. And there is joy on the other side. There's peace on the other side. And I'd love for you to get to know your real self, independent of this therapy, independent of the trauma.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it better than Gabrielle. I mean, I just really hope that people understand that they can feel differently. I know that when I was going through it, I did not think I could. Like, I truly believed that I was essentially damned and that I was never going to feel differently about myself. So I think for me, it's just really helping people understand that, like, they can feel different. Like, this isn't their whole life.
And what gives you both hope? Like,
I think for me, like, being in the program and, having the family session and having my husband come and start to really understand in a way that I've never been able to explain it, accurately. To feel after each session that, I don't have to leave the house. Mine is all via Zoom.
okay.
I can do 4 in a week. Like this week, there'll be 4 sessions. Last week it was 2. But like that, there's a finite number of sessions. Like this isn't like I've been in therapy for 33 years.
Yeah.
This isn't meant to go on and on and on and on and on. You can get help in a finite amount of time, in a relatively shorter amount of time, that can have an impact on the rest of your life, on the quality of the rest of your life. And I hope people take this opportunity. It's giving me a freedom that I have not known since I was 19. And it's I don't know, it's exciting. A little bit scary because who am I without this?
Yeah, that's a very
billion-pound gorilla on my back. Like, who am I?
very complicated.
And I'm excited to know her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I guess for me, I think what gives me hope is just the experience on the other side. When you're a therapist and you actually see someone who's been suffering for years and years and years actually tell you that they finally feel happy again, right? Or they feel hope again. It's like such an amazing experience as like someone who wants to help people, right? To actually see them get better. And to be honest, it happens faster than medication sometimes because the program, if you're doing 10 to 15 sessions, it lasts 4 to 6 weeks, right? And so like, honestly, if I could just bottle up that feeling, like that's what keeps me going is like, it might not work for everyone, right? We never know. You can never predict treatment response, right? But like that feeling is, I think, what keeps me going and gives me hope.
Yeah. So the last question I ask my guests is if there's anything that you're currently, I feel like we've talked about it this whole time, but if there's anything that you're currently working on reclaiming, and that could be, an aspect of your identity or a place or anything.
I think for me, I want to be able to confidently drive my child. Sounds basic, but
That's huge.
That's terrifying. I don't do it. I don't do it. It has to be like desperate situation.
Yeah, finding that sort of center and that sense of calm and peace, and that makes sense. Yeah. How about you, Sophia?
For me, so I just had a child, and I think for me, I'm trying to reclaim my sense of a family too. And like now that I'm building my own family, right? And I think this goes back to like sort of the intergenerational trauma piece where like, especially as a mixed race individual, where a lot of my childhood was like informed by the fact that everyone around me was so worried about security or safety or, as refugees, right? I'm trying to just reclaim a sense of security, right? And also create that for my child too, right?
Yeah.
Like a childhood that I didn't have necessarily. So
Yeah. Aw, thank you both so much. And thank you for the work you're doing in the world and putting into it and trying to help.